Hello again, YouTube family. Thanks for joining me with this video. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and ring the bell if you want for notifications. Again, I'm hoping to reach 25 subscribers as soon as possible. I don't think I'm doing it by the end of this quarter, but who knows, maybe next quarter. This video, we're discussing the insanity going on right now with the voting rights bill that the Democrats have been working on in the House. And as far as the Democrats go, this is a bill that would change their political futures. It also would change the political futures of Republicans. I mean, what the bill does is it vastly increases the ability to vote. It expands access to voting. And that is where the two parties have been at a complete odds for a very long time. For as long as I've been alive, high voting turnout, good for Democrats. Low voting turnout, good for Republicans. You have right now nearly 300 different changes to the voting capability of people state to state. There's voting law changes, almost 300 of them, among red states. It's Republicans who saw what's happened over the last 4 years. You know, Donald Trump got elected, Republicans had the House, they had the Senate, they lost the House, then they lost the Senate, they lost the presidency. I guess technically they lost the presidency before the Senate. Everybody figured the Republicans would keep the Senate because the runoff election was in Georgia. But thankfully the people of Georgia taught them a lesson. But now you have Republicans really doubling down, really hardcore, trying to make it as difficult as possible, as painful as possible. They are targeting minorities with precision. I mean, I could not have told you before this year that there's a large number of black Americans who vote on Sundays. Apparently there are. And Republicans are even trying to do away with Sunday voting just because black Americans vote at such a higher rate on Sundays during early voting than white people do. I mean, they are getting full-blown racist in their attempts to stifle voting turnout in hopes of winning elections. Again, if you're a Republican, I do not understand how you support a party whose whole goal is to decrease access to democracy to American citizens in hopes of winning. Their hopes of winning rely on people not being able to vote. Not that people don't want to vote, but they try to make it as difficult as possible. You'll have areas in a city where you'll have a black neighborhood, predominantly black neighborhood, and there will be no voting locations anywhere nearby. They'll have to travel across town just to vote. That's the kind of insanity Republicans are doing, trying to make it as hard as possible to vote under the guise of election security, which, if you have a minuscule amount of brain power, you know that is complete BS. It is 100% in an attempt to prevent people from being able to vote. But this voting law package Democrats are toying with, and a number of people have pointed out, this may be the one thing that would break the camel's back and cause Democrats to do away with the filibuster, adjust the filibuster, even if they just do away with the filibuster temporarily, because this voting package would benefit Democrats staying in power. And even the crappy corporate Democrats, they love their power. They love their power. They love getting all that juicy money from the billionaires and the corporations, and they don't want to lose it. Granted, Republicans love that money too, and they want to stay in power, and they want to get more Republicans in power so they can continue with the tax cuts for their donors. I mean, that's really the only legislative pursuits Republicans have. But Democrats have toyed with, and some of the things they're looking at doing is going back to a talking filibuster, which isn't really doing away with the filibuster. It's just requiring you, if you're going to filibuster, you don't just get to say that we're going to filibuster and legislation's defeated. You've got to actually get up on the floor and talk nonstop, wear your depends, whatever. I mean, look how old these people in the Senate are. Half of them probably wear depends anyway. But the Democrats, this voting legislation would benefit them. It would also help people who want to vote, but who find it difficult. You have, people in situations where they're single parents with kids, difficult to vote. They work jobs that pay hourly wages. If you're not at work, you don't get paid. Standing in long lines, spending a large amount of time, difficult for someone who's working on an hourly salary, especially when they're already struggling to make ends meet. And then if they've got to give up pay to go vote, it's a difficult juggle. And I understand people that are like, I need to feed my kids more than I need to go vote. And that's what Republicans are banking on. That's why they're trying to curtail the hours in red states. They're trying to decrease the number of polling locations available. They're trying to cancel Sunday voting. They're trying to do everything they can to make it difficult and painful for people who typically vote Democrat to vote. What Democrats are trying to do is make voter registration automatic, to increase the number of voting locations city by city, to increase the ability to do mail-in voting, just like we did this year during the pandemic. We saw it work just fine. There were no massive issues. Trump may whine about it, there being issues, but there weren't. You had secretaries of states, you had governors of states, even red states, saying this election went remarkably smoothly. They had very few incidents of potential voter fraud. And so what we learned during the pandemic, along with there are people who were able to work from home. We also learned that we can vote from home as well. And it's no different, really. So Republicans are trying to fight that. And it's gotten to this argument over the filibuster again, with Mitch McConnell threatening a scorched earth Senate if Democrats do away with filibuster to pass this voting bill, because Mitch McConnell knows if this voting bill passes, it will be much more difficult for Republicans to hold seats in the House, in the Senate, and certainly the presidency. If it's easier to vote, if all you've got to do is register or be automatically registered and have a ballot mailed to your apartment, your house, wherever you live, dormitory if you're in college, it's so easy to fill that thing out and turn it in, send it in. And it would vastly increase voter turnout. It would increase the number of people voting. And like I said, the more people who vote, the better it is for Democrats. And so I want to go through some of these videos that I have of Mitch McConnell, who was making his threats on the floor today. And this is clip 1.
There's an ironic element to this whole conversation. Some Democratic senators seem to imagine this would be a tidy trade-off. If they could just break the rules on a razor-thin majority, sure, it might damage the institution, but then nothing would stand between them and their entire agenda, a new era of fast-track policymaking. But, Mr. President, anyone who really knows the Senate knows that's not what would happen. So let me say this very clearly for all 99 of my colleagues. Nobody serving in this chamber can even begin to imagine what a completely scorched earth Senate would look like.
Okay, in that clip, McConnell talked about breaking the rules. The filibuster is just a rule in the Senate. I believe I've mentioned in previous videos that every time a new Congress is formed, that is, every time there's an election, whether it's every 4-year major presidential election that includes people in the Senate, or whether it's midterms, every time they meet a new House, a new Senate, they sit down and decide on what rules they're going to keep, what rules they're not going to keep, what rules are being put in place. And there's plenty of times during a sitting Congress they'll come up with new rules because these rules did not exist in the Constitution. They weren't here from the beginning. They weren't created by our framers. They were rules that people in Congress over the years and decades have decided to put in place. So as far as breaking the rules, they randomly decide on these rules to begin with. He mentioned the razor-thin majority of the Democrats. And I want to make it perfectly clear that everyone understands the Senate unfairly favors Republicans. And when I say it unfairly favors Republicans, I mean you can take a handful of states, Idaho, Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana. Those 5 states, I guarantee you, do not have a population equal to LA County, let alone California. California gets 2 senators. Those 5 states get 10. That's why the Senate unfairly favors the Republicans. You have extremely red states that are very low population, that are very low GDP. They contribute very little overall to our nation's GDP, but they have an outsized voice in the Senate. And that's the conundrum for Democrats, is all of these low population red states that fill the Senate. In that video, McConnell mentioned damaging the institution. There is no damage to the Senate to do away with a filibuster. It doesn't damage the institution at all. The filibuster is a rule. You can start a rule, you can end a rule. People in the Senate can vote on starting a rule or ending a rule. And it does in no way damage the institution. As a matter of fact, the framers of this country, the framers of the House and the Senate, at the start of this nation, did not intend on the filibuster or anything like it existing. They had in place a rule that allowed a majority vote to end debate, because as one historian said, the early leaders of this country expected that if legislation was proposed, it would receive a vote in the Senate. They did not want the notion of a minority of members preventing the body from doing its job. And that's what the filibuster does. I mean, you have dipshits like Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin that claim that the filibuster allows for debate. It doesn't. The filibuster stops debate. Once the minority party says they're going to filibuster, and the majority party does not have a supermajority worth of votes to overrule the filibuster with cloture, it's done. The legislation fails. So it does not promote debate. It does not cause debate. It ends debate. It ends legislation. That's the whole point of the filibuster, and that's how Republicans have been using it since Obama was in office. Nobody can begin to imagine what a scorched earth Senate would look like. Yes, we can. Those of us who were conscious over the last 4 years. Republicans, they have not been negotiating with Democrats to get legislation accomplished during the last 4 years when Trump was in office, and Republicans had the House for part of that, for half of that, and the Senate for the entire 4 years. They were meeting together to come up with their plans among Republicans. Democrats weren't getting invited to the party. So, yeah, I mean, that's just a pointless threat. Ominous, trying to be ominous on the part of Mitch McConnell. You have no idea what the scorched earth Senate would look like, because I assume you forgot previous years. And this is video number 2.
Everything that Democrat senates did to Presidents Bush and Trump, everything the Republican Senate did to President Obama, would be child's play compared to the disaster that Democrats would create for their own priorities if they break the Senate.
In that video, McConnell basically admits that the Senate's already been using scorched earth policy. He talks about what Democrat Senates have done under Republican presidents, what Republican Senates have done under Democrat presidents. He mentions breaking the Senate again, which, again, doing away with a rule does not break the Senate. It may break the minds of Republicans, but it does not break the Senate. And, McConnell admitted the way the Senate has worked in the past. What he did not mention was that prior to 2010, the filibuster had been used on average once per year. 2010 was a midterm election where Republicans got control of the Senate while Obama was in office. After 2010, the filibuster's been used on average 85 times per year. It went from decades of being used once per year to being used 85 times per year, which is a self-defeating point for McConnell if he ever mentioned that actual stat. Republicans already have been using scorched earth, trying to not allow a single policy of Democrats to pass. And this is video 3.
Until the Senate ceased to be distinct from the House in any respect, this chaos would not open up an express lane to liberal change. It would not open up an express lane for the Biden presidency to speed into the history books. The Senate would be more like a 100-car pileup. Nothing moved.
And in that video, McConnell mentions the Senate would cease to be different from the House, which, honestly, you read history, when our House and our Senate was started, they had rule books created by the framers of the country, the framers of the Constitution, the people that started this country, and the rule books were virtually identical. The framers of this country did not have a vision of the Senate being significantly different than the House. They had like rule books. The Senate would be like a 100-car pileup, nothing moving. So basically, Mitch McConnell's threatening that, well, if you guys do away with the filibuster when Republicans get control, we'll just stop everything from passing, like we did before when Obama was in office. There's no difference. I mean, it's an empty threat. It's an empty threat. I mean, anyone with a functional brain knows that, yes, if Republicans get control of the Senate, they will try and stop every piece of legislation the Biden administration tries to pass. They've already done it before. There's nothing new there. And this is video 4.
As soon as Republicans wound up back in the saddle, we wouldn't just erase every liberal change that hurt the country. We'd strengthen America with all kinds of conservative policies with zero input from the other side. How about this? Nationwide right to work for working Americans. Defunding Planned Parenthood in sanctuary cities on day one. a whole new era of domestic energy production, sweeping new protections for conscience and the right to life of the unborn, concealed carry reciprocity in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, massive hardening of security on our southern border.
And that was an interesting video because basically McConnell admitted that Republicans have not been trying to push the agenda they've been telling their voters they're trying to push. McConnell there was threatening that, whoa, if you guys do away with the filibuster, how about if we try and put our agenda forward? You know what? If Republicans win the Senate and the House and the presidency, they should try to push their agenda forward. That's the whole point of people voting you into office. They vote you into office because they want a legislation pushed forward. They want things accomplished. They don't want you to constantly virtue signal with them that you're going to end abortion, that you're going to protect the southern border, that you're going to defund Planned Parenthood. I mean, he kept one of this laundry list of policy issues that most likely his voters in Kentucky say, yeah, that's what we want. And McConnell's basically admitting that, well, we've not been trying to do any of that. So far, all we've tried to do is give tax cuts to corporations and billionaires. But if you do away with the filibuster, maybe we'll do it. Maybe we'll just do it. And he was mentioning, they would put together legislation with no input from the other side. I don't know the last piece of Republican legislation that had input from the other side. And he mentioned nationwide right to work. So he's basically threatening Democrats with, we're going to hurt workers, we're going to hurt women in sanctuary cities by defunding Planned Parenthood, we're going to hurt the environment by pushing our big coal agenda, we're going to hurt women with making abortion illegal, we're going to make the country more dangerous by expanding conceal and carry nationwide, and we'll be even harsher on the brown people that come across our border. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. He's like, we will be more despicable than we've already been if you go forward with this plan to augment the filibuster or do away with filibuster to pass the voting rights bill. And it's asinine. This is video 5. It's very short.
So the pendulum, Mr. President, would swing both ways. And it would swing hard.
The pendulum swings both ways, Mr. President. And it'll swing very hard. Mitch McConnell there was full of completely empty threats. I mean, the stuff he threatens, Republicans already do. There's no change. I mean, they already don't work with Democrats. They don't do all this stuff. And McConnell is honestly just scared that Democrats may actually have some success pushing this bill through by either augmenting the filibuster or doing away with the filibuster temporarily to pass the voting rights bill. And I have another video to analyze, and it has nothing to do with McConnell directly. It has to do with one of the two people who McConnell is banking on being opposed to doing away with the filibuster, and this is Kyrsten Sinema. This was during the vote in the Senate on Biden's coronavirus package after Bernie Sanders had put up the amendment to raise the minimum wage to $15 per hour. That amendment was proposed by Sanders, and so members of the Senate had to vote on it. This is Kyrsten Sinema voting on that bill. This is the first clip of her. She walks into the chamber and tries to get Mitch McConnell's attention. He's talking to some other woman, and when she touches his shoulder, he turns, sees it's a Democrat, and is like, "What do you want?" and turns back around, because he does not give a damn about her. I don't know why he matters to her, but she does not matter to him. And then, again, she tries to get Mitch McConnell's attention. Like, I planned this stupid display. Watch. And that's all she's doing. And this is the end of the clip. Just her with her vote, which was obviously pre-planned. This goofy little thumbs down curtsy. And it was obviously a mimic of John McCain's thumbs down on the healthcare legislation that failed in Donald Trump's first year in office. The difference is, if you go back and look at the John McCain video, I probably should have brought a clip of that too and added that in here. But John McCain's thumbs down was spur of the moment. It was genuine, I believe. I believe his thumbs down move was a genuine thing he did on spur of the moment. It was a spur of the moment thing, and he had to vote. The vote came to him, and he made the thumbs down thing, and it was kind of a sudden spur of the moment thing. Sinema obviously planned this gimmick display, whatever you want to call it, where she was going to walk in there, do a thumbs down with her little curtsy, just to rub it in to Americans' faces that she's like, I do not want peons to get raises. And for whatever reason, she sought the approval of Mitch McConnell for it. I don't know if she just thought, well, he was upset with what McCain did, he'll like this. I don't know what her particular was there, but she is one of the two senators. He mentioned it in his speech. I didn't include it in my video clips because it's really doesn't matter. I mean, anybody who pays any attention to politics understands that Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are the two Democrats, very right-wing. They're basically Republicans who run as Democrats. She's from Arizona. Manchin is from West Virginia. And they have both said adamantly they will not vote to do away with filibuster. They don't know why, but they won't do it. And so they would rather nothing get accomplished in favor of Republicans and McConnell than do away with filibuster and get legislation accomplished. And there are other Democrats, don't get me wrong, there are other corporate Democrats. As far as that voting down the minimum wage, there were 8 Democrats that voted in favor, against the minimum wage, and they were voting that way to give cover to Sinema and Manchin. That's their whole point of voting that way, was to give cover to Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. This goofy display of Sinema, I hope she felt like a buffoon when she was doing it, because she looked like a buffoon doing it. Why a Democrat senator was trying to get the attention of Mitch McConnell. Look what I'm about to do. I mean, that is like something kids do, trying to get the attention of an adult. I don't know Kyrsten Sinema. I don't know what her mindset is like, but that is like childish behavior. And honestly, I don't know why a Democrat wants the Republican minority leader's approval for this goofy act she's going to do. I mean, everyone knew she was going to vote against the minimum wage increase. She herself, when she's talking to her constituents, lies and says, I want to increase the minimum wage. When she has a chance, she votes against it. So, no, she does not want to increase the minimum wage. She does not support increasing the minimum wage, and neither do a lot of people. And that atrocious display was embarrassing. It's one of those things where you feel embarrassed for her because she's acting so goofy. And that's that. I mean, she is one of the people that McConnell is banking on, stopping Democrats from expanding the ability for people to vote in this country. Hopefully, Democrats will get their heads out of their asses and get it done. Thanks for watching.